and again, as usual, in this opportunity, we primarily speak about ourselves, but we try to find the mirror of ourselves in the Parsha of the week. That's essentially what it is. The Parsha is Vayishlach, and this is where Yankiv, after having finished his confrontation with Lavan in the previous Parsha, which we discussed last week, now he's facing the next challenge with Esav. And he is sending messengers to Esav, trying to convey to him. Convey? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just want to make sure we understand what I'm saying. Convey to him the idea that he wants to be friendly with him, that he's on his better side, and he gets back the return message that Esav is not of the same conviction or the same disposition as he is. As a matter of fact, Esav is coming towards him with an army of 400 men. Yeah, a little division. So Yankiv became very concerned. I'm sure you noticed the way Rashi explains Vayiro Yankiv Ma'id Vayetzer Lei. Yankiv feared, was very scared. Vayetzer Lei, he was also disturbed. And Rashi explains what are these two things. He was feared lest he gets hurt, but he was also disturbed and concerned if he hurts others. And this is said in the same pasuk. He had no inclination of hurting anyone. So he did several things and so forth.
He was scared and what? Stressed?
What?
Scared and or disturbed.
Then one of the things that Yankiv did was prayer. He did a prayer. And he says, Hashem, you had promised me that you're going to be with me, that you're going to safeguard me, and so forth. And now I'm scared about Esav. And in the middle he says a very famous quote that we know from Tanya, Kotointi mikol hachasodim mikol ha'emes. Kotointi. I have become small, meaning I have become humbled from all the kindness and all the truth that you have shown toward me. Kol hachasodim mikol ha'emes. Okay, whatever further you in other aspects in the Parsha, I want to focus in on several aspects that we have mentioned here. In the previous Parsha, Yankiv says to Lavan, I worked for you for 20 years. And because I work so diligently, this is how I accumulate this wealth. This is not yours. I accumulate this wealth because of my diligent work, day and night. Now comes to this Parsha, Yankiv speaking to Hashem. He says, I don't understand what happened to me. I crossed this Yarden with one stick. And now I became two groups, two camps. I became a huge entourage. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. He says, I'm so humbled for all the kindness and the goodness that you did to me. Because when I crossed the Yarden coming this way, I had just my staff, my stick, and now I'm so huge. So here Yankiv is saying, I worked for this. This is mine because I deserve it. And Yankiv's turning around and says, I'm completely humbled. I'm shocked when I contemplate the goodness and kindness that you did to me. Similarly, within this Pasha itself, right in the beginning it says, Vayishlach Yankiv Malochim, Yankiv said messengers to Esav. And Rashi says, who were these messengers? Malochim, angels. Yankiv, made do with angels. That doesn't sound like a very humble person. You angel, come over here. I have a message. And then he says, Koteinti Mikol Hasodi. And you learned further, when he met up with Esav, he went and he bowed to him 10 times till he reached Esav, and Esav was all softened up because of this bowing and all that. The point is that we see two very opposite expressions on Yankiv's part. We see a very strong stance, a proud stance, the way he talks to Lavan, the way he's sending messenger Malochim out, and the one that when he speaks to Hashem isn't completely different. So clearly, in both instances, Yankiv was not lying. He was not lying to Hashem, for sure. He was not lying in Yankiv. He comes through the way he is. Therefore, the quality that surfaces over here about Yankiv is both qualities combined. On the one hand, he recognizes totally that everything that I have is due to Hashem's kindness. On the other hand, he stands up very proudly and does what he needs to do in terms of debating Lavan and facing up to Esav and so forth. How do these two join together? There is a concept in Chassidus which I'm sure you heard many, many times, and it's called bitul. Bitul loosely means self-nullification, belittling oneself. Now, from the perspective of bitul, you would not expect a person who is bottle to stand up to Lavan and say, you have no business over here. Or use the malach to send them as a messenger. There is an element, an aspect in Avodas Hashem, in our relationship to Hashem, that is even purer and deeper than bitul. And I want to discuss this briefly. Bitul means something, a person, for instance, that senses that views himself and his life something that belongs to him, that is separate and has his own purposes, but he recognizes also that he has to be bottled to Hashem, because ultimately all the brachas and all success come from Hashem. So he has to humble himself and beg and show his own humility and so forth. This is called bittul. Bittul applies to something that is a metzius, is a separate metzius, present, but it's mevatel. Like in halacha, there is a din of bittul. You know what bittul is? If a drop of milk falls into a pot of meat, so the milk becomes bottle. If it is a certain proportion, it becomes bottle. Bottle does not mean that it's not there. It means it's insignificant, but it's there. It means bottle. Something that's not there doesn't have to be bottle. Then there is another element, another thing. And this was Yankiv's stance. Yankiv was not bottled to Hashem. Yankiv, everything that he did, whether it is working for the sheep, working for Lavan, raising his children, carrying out his mission with Esau, everything was not focused, was not on his own purposes. In everything that he did, he was a shliach from Hashem. When Yankiv originally, so to speak, through a conniving, retrieved the Bechoira from Esau. Remember that one? The beginning of Pasha's tale is birthright. Why did he do that? Because he wanted to have the honor of Bechoir. He did it because a Bechoir is supposed to be the one who does the service for Hashem. He says, Esau is not fit for it. I have to safeguard, cover the honor of Hashem, and I have to step into it. I have to do this in order to safeguard the honor of Hashem. It wasn't a personal gain at all. The same thing when Yankiv went through a very devious, very difficult path of getting the brachas from Yitzchak. It wasn't that Yankiv was anxious to get all that wealth. Yankiv was not anxious to get wealth. Yankiv knew that this is the only way that Hashem's purpose will be accomplished. As a matter of fact, at that point, Yitzchak wanted to bless the one who had the birthright, the Bechor. Yitzchak thought that Esau was still Bechor, but really Esau had relinquished his Bechor. So it by rightly belonged to Yaakov. But it wasn't anything that he was looking for personal gain. It was all in line with Avodas Hashem. And when one stands in terms of Avodas Hashem, one has not only the right, but he has the obligation to stand proudly, without any humility, because he's representing the king himself. We will be reading the Megillah soon. This year it's a couple months, but the Megillah, everybody knows the Megillah. We begin to count the days for the Megillah way ahead. Mm-hmm. So one of the odd things in Megillah was the fact that Mordechai Tzaddik stood up while Haman was passing by, and he became so focused and so clearly noticeable that he is defying Haman. Defying means that he disregards him. He disregards him. And he stood up, made it, he didn't hide it. He could have, the Rebbe once says it, Mordechai didn't want to buy to Haman, he could have hidden. He didn't have to stand there at a moment when Haman passes by. He could have gotten away, nobody would know the difference. Mordechai made sure that he is there. And he was standing up. And thereby he endangered the key people. He endangers the whole people. Right? Because he wanted to show Haman personally that he didn't care about him, so he took it upon himself to endanger the whole people. That makes sense? Of course not. There was nothing personal in that at all. If there must be something personal, then there would be something very, very wrong. He stood up because he stood up for Koved Hashem. And then it makes no difference what happens. And the same thing is with Yankiv over here. And this explains, so to speak, it seems like the dual personality of Yankiv. Here he is standing up and is doing everything with tremendous pride and forthrightness and strength. And here he says, I'm so humbled. Nothing of this belongs to nothing. I don't deserve any of that. This is all your kindness and your mercy. This is what we call an eternal message to us, that there are two aspects in our lives. There's the aspect of pride and strength. A Yid must never feel humbled in front of a goy, in front of goyishkeit, in general. And at the same time, he internally he is the most humble and submissive person. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was talking to Yidden, and he was telling them that Hashem chose you to be His nation, he told them right away at the same time that Hashem chose you to be His nation not because you are the greatest nation on earth. He said because in fact you're the smallest of all the nations on earth. But you are Hashem's nation. And as such, you have every right to be proud, stand up, but not because of yourself. This is what Yiddishkeit is. The union of Yiddishkeit is not how things are, so to speak, in my little world. The union of Yiddishkeit is that a Yid represents Meibushin himself, Hashem himself. This is something which is we have to get it at the point very clearly, because we always get lost in so to speak in the mix-up of the world. And the one thing that I always use to illustrate and demonstrate it clearly was the story with Avraham Avinu, which I mentioned later several times, not recently. That Avraham Avinu wanted to understand what's going on in the world, right? Who's running the world? And apparently, what he was trying to understand is the world itself. The world is running, and the sun is rising, and the planets are turning. What's making them turn? What's making this world work? Go. Everybody around him says that there are all kinds of different powers. Avodah Zarah, this one, the sun has its own power, the moon has its own power, the stars have their own power. And Avraham Avinu says, no, it doesn't make sense. Where is it all coming from? In other words, this seems almost like a scientific research. I want to make sense of the world. Finally, when he reached a clarity in his own mind, now I understand what's happening in the world. There is a force completely superior, infinitely superior to the world, that keeps the world going. Now the world makes sense. So, what would a good scientist do if he made sense of a complex issue? Okay, now it makes sense. He would write a big book, and he would have his name floating all over the place, the great discoverer and the great philosopher, and he would go and enjoy his glory. What else does he need, right? He discovered the truth about the world. What did Avram do? Avram then turned around and he said, since that it is God who creates and sustains and keeps the world moving, then therefore our whole focus on the world is a mistake. The fact that we are focused on building ourselves and becoming and becoming big and successful in the world, the whole thing is a mistake. What should be our focus? On serving Hashem. That should be the focus, because that's the real thing, that's the real existence. This is the one point where a Yid, in essence, differs from the rest of the world. Like I mentioned many times, Goyim also have mitzvahs. There are 7 mitzvahs that Moshe Rabbeinu gave for Goyim. What are all these 7 mitzvahs? All of these 7 mitzvahs are essentially surrounding the safeguarding of the world. The world should be a normal place to live in. That's what the mitzvahs are. It shouldn't rob, it shouldn't steal, it shouldn't kill. And these are the kind of things that maintain a normal civil operation. And the justification for that is simple, because what's being taught in these 7 mitzvahs is you should know the world has been created. It doesn't belong to you. You didn't make it. You are a visitor over here. So you have to behave. If you don't behave, then you don't belong here. It's very simple. But that's it. You have to safeguard the world. A Yid, his requirement is, and his duty, and his gift that the Rebbe gave him is that he is not even, so to speak, relating to his activities to the world, his activities to Hashem himself. It's a completely different task. His job is to reveal godness in the world. His job is to recognize the unity of the Hashem, Shema Yisrael. That's what his job is. A completely different function. This is what Yankiv was demonstrating, or shows us in all of his pronouncements. That in all of his activities, he had only one thing in mind: to do his thing to serve Hashem. Like Rashi says in the previous parsha, the last week's parsha, that after that Yankiv finished the first 7 years of working for Lavan, and now he says that this was in payment for letting him have Rachel as his wife. So he comes to Lavan and says, okay, 7 years are up, give me my wife. So Rashi says, doesn't seem to be a decent way of expressing himself, give me my wife. So Rashi says, but this was not done out of personal hysteria or personal urge. He says, I have to bring to the world 12 tribes. When am I going to accomplish it? So we see in every, like his life seems to be quite, on the surface, simple, but if you go a little bit deeper, you see it's a completely different thing.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
when we say like that Yaakov wasn't Batul Hashem in the sense that like the same way like the Goyim who keep the seven mitzvahs are like they keep the seven laws because God is in charge, and that's like Batul, like they recognize their own existence and they recognize that God exists and they have to conform to that. Yaakov wasn't like that, we're saying?
They have to conform not to God, they have to conform to the fact that the world is to them unknown. It's not theirs to destroy. But they essentially live in this world. You understand? But you should know that you have to respect it, it's not yours. Yankiv and Yidden, they don't live in the world per se. They live in Hashem's world. The reason they partake of the world is because they have a shlichus of Hashem. They have a duty to Hashem.
Not like Batul though,
It's beyond Batul. Batul means that you have your own interest. But here, that's beyond it. The whole interest is, focus is only as a shliach of Hashem. This is the Yahash of shlichus. There's a story, I don't remember if I mentioned it here or not, a story from Rabbi, that the Rebbe was on the mission from the Frierdiker Rebbe, the father-in-law. Frierdiker Rebbe sent the Rebbe on a mission to Reb Chaim Oizer, to one of the great Rabbonim in Poland. He needed to deal with him. So the Rebbe came to Reb Chaim Oizer. Chaim Oizer was a big Rav and a big Rosh Yeshiva, a big yeshiva with many Bochim who were great Lomdim. The Rebbe came into the Medrash, and he was waiting his turn to go in to see Reb Chaim Oizer. In the meantime, he was sitting there in the Medrash. You heard the story? Okay? And so he was sitting in the Medrash, and all the Bochim found out, this is Rabbi Rebbe's son-in-law. Oh, they were curious to see, okay, what kind of son-in-law did the Rabbi Rebbe finally, get. They started asking the Rebbe various questions in learning, and the Rebbe was mum. Didn't say anything. I hear, said nothing. They completely they lost all respect. What's going on over here? This is the Rabbi Shalom Seder. This is what it is. They're completely taken aback. Huh?
What Yeshua say?
Sorry?
What Yeshua say? What Yeshua it happened?
Where it happened?
Because they were asking him questions.
No, where?
Where in
Yeshua?
Which yeshiva? Reb Chaim Oizer's yeshiva. I don't know what the name of the yeshiva was. In Poland. You should know, before the war, Poland, I know it was in Warsaw. Poland was a huge Jewish community, the biggest Jewish community in the world in those days. Before the war, 3.5 million Jews. And 90% of them were exterminated. So Poland was a rich country, a lot of yeshivas, a lot of lomdas and all that. Anyway, so he's sitting there and they're asking him questions, and he is mum. Finally, he was allowed in to see Reb Chaim Oizer, and he went in and he did what his shlichus, whatever it is. And then he came out, and again he sat down in his medrash, and again he said, okay, Bochim, what did you ask me? He said, going back on their questions, and all of a sudden, he has a mouth. All of a sudden, he has what to say. And they were really taken aback by his lomdus. The Rebbe's lomdus was unique, totally unique. And they were. Then finally, Chaim Oizer, they called him Chaim Oizer, what happened? So he came out and he asked the Rebbe, why did you do that? That for a while, for a moment, you made like a Chil Shem Lubavitch, that the Bochim thought that you. So the Rebbe says, when I am a shliach from Shver from Rebbe, I don't exist except for that shliachas. I can't speak out. I'm doing the shlichus and there's nothing else. Once I did my shlichus, now I'm back to myself. Now I can talk. This is, this is a Rebbe, but in essence, this is every Yid. In essence, this is every Yid. Every Yid is on a shlichus from Vayishlach, all the time. And everything that he does, that's why he can do with pride and strength. Because he is on a shlichus from Vayishlach. While at the same time, he recognizes that all the greatness that he has and all the success, this is the Meibish's bracha. And the more bracha there is, the more humble he becomes. Kotointi. Like the Alter Rebbe explains this in Tanya, Kotointi. This is an overall view of Eden, Yiddishkeit, and so forth. As everything, and this is clearly, directly reflecting our own lives, every individual person, the Rebbe explains, every individual person, every individual Yid, has a Yankiv in himself and has a little Esav in himself. It's in a constant rivalry.
Battle.
A constant rivalry between Yankiv and Esav. And Esav comes to Yankiv. This is literally the Yetzer Hara, or whatever you call it, comes to Yankiv, the Yetzer Tev, and says, "Who do you think you are? Why are you holding yourself so haughty? You have to daven. You have to learn. Who do you think you are? You think you are going to make Hashem rich with your learning another blood Gemara? It sounds like, like a dream. This is something which occurs almost within every one of us. All the time. What is the real truth? The absolute truth is that when Yankiv, when that part sits down to learn and learns for 10 minutes, he is infinitely superior to the whole world of Esav. And he can be very proud of it. The whole world of Esav, the riches and the power and the 400 soldiers, everything. I remember precisely which year it was. I don't remember. I can't pin it down, but many years ago. It was like in the 60s, 1960s, in the old century. There was a contest on Shakespeare, a Shakespearean contest in the universities, a contest of universities or high schools, I don't remember. And Shiva University, they had students who also participated in this contest. And they came out, on a good level, whatever it is, whether they won the contest or they were not. On a high level, they did very well in this contest. And I have to kind of preamble this. Yeshiva University, the yeshiva went through many gyrations. Sometimes it's on the up and sometimes in terms of its emphasis on Yiddishkeit and Yishumayim and all that. Baruch Hashem, today, it's much higher than it was then. It's a nice level. So that I'm not talking about Lashon Hara. So I'm just telling you that. So in those days, they prided themselves on being in university, scholarly, real scholars. So, and so I said, the Bochum from the university did very well on this contest. And this contest and the fact that they did well was publicized very proudly, all over in the Jewish community. They made a whole ado. They made, I don't remember, made a dinner for them. I don't remember exactly, but much ado was made because of this success. So I remember personally, that I never spoke about Rabbi about this, and they was very, very upset. Okay, you did very kind in Shakespeare, but this is what you're proud of. And here's what the Rebbe said. These are the Rebbe's expressions. A yingel, a boy, who learns a blood Gemara. A boy who learns one blood Gemara. One page. A blood is a page. A yingel who learns a page of Gemara is infinitely superior to them. And no fuss is being made of that. No fuss is being made. That's what you're making a fuss about. A yingel who learns the blood Gemara is infinitely superior. That's what those are. Let me explain. There are several things at several points, several aspects that go into this statement. Number one, from a Jewish perspective, learning Gemara is a mitzvah. Learning Shakespeare is not a mitzvah. So, there is no comparison. This is on the most obvious and basic level. The truth is that and I've met many people who have been in universities and came back to yeshiva, and they said learning a piece of Gemara is literally much more difficult, much more challenging than anything that you study in the university. Much more difficult. That's a second level. But then there's a third level, which is even more revealing. The truth is, when you learn, you understand, and you understand with your seichel. Right? You understand with your seichel. In order to understand, the seichel has to be vibrant. The seichel has to be awake. Like recently I've been demonstrating the inyan of seichel the following way. 1 + 1 is 2. Everybody knows that, right? 1 + 1 is 2. Now it sounds like a very simple statement. The computer also can tell you, if you say 1 + 1, the computer will say 2. As a matter of fact, I remember years back, there was a loner, an elderly person who was alone. He had a little doggy, and this was his companion. He was walking around with his doggy on Eastern Parkway. He was a decent gentleman. So this man once demonstrated. We were boys in yeshiva. We stood around him. So he demonstrated to us what he is able to teach his dog. So he would say 2 and 3, and the dog would bark out 5 times. Right? Wisdom, right? 2 and 3, and the dog would bark out 5 times. So the dog also can do 2 and 3. Now I want you to understand, before I go on, The dog didn't bark out 5 times. The dog doesn't know to formulate, believe me, 2 and 3. The dog can bark out 2 times and 3 times. And you will see that it's 5. The dog didn't bark out 5 times. You understand what I'm saying? The dog barked out 2 times and barked out 3 times.
Not even though.
And to you it seems, oh wow, what wisdom, 5 times. The truth is, when a human being says 1 and 1 is 2, and the computer says 1 and 1 and 2, they're not saying the same thing. This is an important thing to understand. They're not saying the same thing. When the computer says 1 and 1 is 2, it's not saying, it doesn't have the concept of 2. It says it is conventional. What conventionally means? You will have 2 ones. 1 and 1, you have 2 ones. It doesn't have the idea of combining, of joining two units. A human being has a true idea of joining. That 1 on 1 is 1 unit of 2. It's not 1 on 1, because otherwise it's 1 on 1 is 1 on 1. That's it. What connection do they have to each other? The reason that we recognize only the human being has this seichel element, that we recognize that 1 on 1 there is a such thing as a unit of 2, that the combination of 2, is because we have a much deeper sense, because we sense the unity in the world, so that there could be a unification between 2 elements. The computer doesn't know about unity, doesn't know about the concept of unity. Everything is a separate entity. So you have 1 on 1 is 1 on 1. When we say 2 and the computer says 2, mean totally different thing. We mean like a combination, a unit of 2. Computer says conventionally call it 2. Let's call it 2. You understand the difference? So that to understand anything with seichel means it involves having a sense, an insight of what this kind of truth this represents. Like I mention all the time, you're not allowed to steal, right? Everybody knows you're not allowed to steal. Why? Because if you steal, you're going to get caught and thrown in jail. Right? So that even a dog will know. What does a human being know? That you're not allowed to steal for a completely different reason. Because if you steal, you're violating God's principles in the world. To have that sense, you need a human seichel, you need a human neshama. And this is what the Rebbe was saying. To understand a blood Gemara, to understand any argument of the Gemara, any svar of the Gemara, you need a unique access to your neshama. To that this makes sense. This is a seichel that comes from the neshama. To understand anything that you taught in the university, you don't need this kind of neshama element. So when you learn a Pesach Gemara, you're really infinitely above any of that. Because when you learn a Pesach Gemara, you're actually demonstrating, revealing a godly element coming from the neshama. Using this example of stealing, I want to explain to you something very, very important. There's a common law. You know the common law, the United States federal law, the state law, the local law. if somebody steals and gets caught, what do we do with them? He gets punished. He has to pay. He goes to jail. Whatever it is, whatever they punish us, on what basis? Why does he get thrown into jail? Why does he get punished?
Because there was witnesses.
What?
Because there was witnesses.
On what basis that he gets thrown into jail? Why does he get punished? What is the principle?
Because he did something wrong.
No. The principle is that he disturbed society. Right? Society, we, millions of people, we got together over here and we decided we are going to live in a certain way over here. And anybody who disturbs that way of life, we're going to punish him. Nothing to do with God, nothing to do with right and wrong. This is just, so to speak, a social convention. It's called a convention. But we agreed that this is how you'll be amazed. The entire code of law of the United States, the federal law and on the state law and federal law, is all based on this principle. The society cannot tolerate this to happen. That's it. Nothing to do with God, nothing to do with right and wrong, good and bad, nothing at all.
Weren't they very much on higher power though? I mean, they were like, God we trust and all.
Yeah, this is way back, but since then, right now, look, they're constantly progressing. They're making progress now. Now the progress is that gay marriages is okay. Right?
It is.
It's an abomination. It's an abomination. It's sickening even to talk about it, to think about it. It's okay because society agrees that it's okay. It became okay. It has nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with God. You understand? So you can be a lawyer and you can know the U.S. code of law inside and out and argue your cases in court and have absolutely no idea of value, of good and bad. Zero. Ayingel, one page of Gemara, you have access and you have touched on the core of your soul much more than any of that. You want to listen to them?
Yeah, I read before, the law school, a lot of Goyim, they would learn Gemara. So I wondered maybe you could touch how if it fits, you think, how it is. Because when they learn as a book,
Two things. Number one, this is yesteryear. Number one. Number two, the Gemara makes a statement. And the Gemara statement, it is based on truth. And by them, it is based on a different basis. But they just wanted to figure out how the Gemara figures out a certain case. You know what I'm saying? But the basis of it is a totally different thing. The basis, the reason for the rule is a totally different thing.
They're doing like a case study.
A case study, that's all. So we have to understand, if ever your own Esau comes to you and says, listen, who are you? I have an army of 400 men. Who do you think you are? You have to stand up proudly and say, who do you think you are? I am doing Hashem's work, I'm doing Hashem's shlichus, I'm learning Gemara, I'm learning Chumash, I'm saying Tilim, I'm giving Tzedakah. There is nothing, I'm very proud. And the littlest thing that I do is infinitely superior to all the grand things that you do. There's no comparison. So that our lives are a kind of a paradoxical. What paradoxical means? A contradictory combination of two very opposite qualities. On the one hand, we are extremely proud. On the other hand, we're extremely humble. We are proud in the face of the world, but we are humble in the face of Hashem. And with this is what makes us Eden. How did Eden receive the Torah? What gave them the Torah when they said, Na'aseh v'nishma? That's not very, very haughty, very proud statement. I'll do what you tell me to do. That's humility. Then at the same time they said, but we will also understand, ultimately. We will understand, we will know how to deal with Esau, we will know how to deal with any opposition. So, with this all said, and this is clearly the message in the Parsha, just want to encourage each one of us, we should understand the tremendous accomplishment of whatever time you have in sitting and learning another piece of Gemara, another Mishnayos, another piece of Chumash, Rashi. It's a tremendous accomplishment. It seems almost like, how's it compared to if I got a degree, if I became a lawyer? The opposite is true. This is a tremendously greater accomplishment and accomplishment than anything else. You learn a piece of Gemara, your mind opens up, your heart opens up, your neshama speaks to you. You come to life. The fact is, the practical fact is that our yeshiva bachrim who end up going on shlichus, who have never had one day in secular school, literally, not one day, they have to become shluchim. They go to any place in the world, to foreign lands, they have to learn new languages. Even to local, even if it's within the country, still they don't know the language, the English language, in a way that to present kind of to offer a speech or so, to compare to. In no time, literally in no time, they pick it up like nothing. Why? Because they have open minds and open hearts, and because they have a purpose. Because they're doing it not for their own aggrandizement. They're doing it because they're doing it as a shlichus. And overnight they become speakers and teachers and lecturers and whatever else they need to do. I personally know many my own chaverim that went to Spanish-speaking countries, to French-speaking countries, to Italian-speaking, whatever it is. It didn't take them long before they became proficient in that language. I know this is my personal thing, my son, who is a shliach here in Port Washington, he is the biggest orator in that area. There are a few big Reform temples over there. You can imagine the Reform temples, their rabbis, and the whole thing is that they know how to speak. All the congregants from there come to hear his speech. Port Washington, Long Island.
But they're from there like Orthodox here.
What?
They're from there like Orthodox in Brooklyn.
What do you mean? What do you say?
They're very religious Reform people.
Religious people.
They're much less than in most places.
This is the important thing. You have to understand, we have an neshama, and we have koiches that the Rebbe gives us. And with this, we triumph. And this is, we're not humiliated by anything, by anyone. And with this, with Hashem's help, we will triumph. We will, our own loving, our own internal Esav, and also the external Esav. We'll go to, to the Geulah Shlinger with Mashiach with this from here, from Seagate. Huh?
What does it have to like? I know, I mean, it's a lot of times when you have accomplishments as a yid, it can still go to your head. Because you said the ultimate of the yid is that.
It goes to your head.
No, it can go to somebody's head. Like if they have accomplishments, you said like that's not the. It's the idea of maybe you would say a goy or something, but the yid is accomplishments. He knows it's all from Hashem, right?
It's not only, it is from Hashem, and it is for Hashem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying, what was the, like, or the reason why it is, or what's the, why it might go to somebody's head, if they haven't accomplished?
Why it may go to somebody's head? Because we're